with any warder bonds like that, if you are not in lockstep with that person being inside each other's heads, what a nightmare. If I was in the Green Aja, I would rather be working in circles with other Aes Sedai than,
Kind of like the
having
Reds
multiple
do.
warders. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, a little group of Reds seems to be
They're a
a
force.
force. Like, Reds don't have warders for a reason.
I mean, it's not a terrible idea.
It's not. Like, pairing up Aes Sedai instead of having warders, I think could work. But I also appreciate, like, the warder aspect and the bond and how it adds to the story. But for me personally, absolutely the not. Stay out of my head. That's confidential information and you don't have the security clearance for it.
I mean, unless you're like Alanna, who's just thirsty and wants a menagerie of men, like, sure, go for it. But yeah, it's dangerous, though. Very dangerous. Help boost this video by giving it a like, and to not miss out on other coverage, make sure you're subscribed. Hello and welcome back to the channel. Amber with Laura once again, episode 4 of our Wheel of Time rewatch. We just called this the ping pong episode because we are all over the map this time. And it's kind of nice to have so much going on, but for a recap situation, it makes things harder.
Right.
How did you like this Ishamael cold open?
I think it might be actually one of my favorite scenes in this season.
Why?
Honestly, it's the visuals of it all. The way that they capture breaking the seals, and I am an Ishamael fan account.
Ishamael did nothing wrong.
Nothing wrong ever.
Attorney at law.
I'm his personal attorney and his personal PR rep. I just enjoyed the way it looked, honestly. They really leaned into the special effects in like a way that they haven't done in a while.
I like it paired with the old tongue dark prophecy too, him speaking in a, totally foreign language to audience members.
Yeah, and he has this way of looking completely in control and completely unhinged all at once all the time.
I really like for Ishamael that when he's channeling, there's no concentration on his face. It's just so effortless for Ishamael.
It's a little lark for him.
Yeah, and then we have like the Aes Sedai who are like really
whole
like
body
the
into
hand
it.
Motions.
Like they got to put their whole body in, and he's just making like small expressions and having these huge waves of powerful channeling coming out of him.
Yeah, it makes me think about Nynaeve's accepted test where when she channels, she's not really doing anything with her arms, but it's just kind of always exploding out of her body, completely uncontrolled. And then you have Egwene, who last episode had that confrontation with Liandrin, and she kind of puffs out her chest and catches the ring smelting pot fire and just like blows it towards Liandrin. So I like how this far into the series, each character has their own channeling characteristics, and it's kind of interesting to watch that.
I really enjoyed that they make it so effortless for the Forsaken because it does a good job of bringing to life how powerful they are in comparison. Because without like the physical exertion that you see from Aes Sedai's, how would you really be able to visually quantify how much more powerful a Forsaken is?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they had to have thought about this. It's not just a coincidence. And I like what they're doing with that. I'm really hoping once we get to see some more Aes Sedai characters like Elyda or a Cadsuane, what their channeling is going to look like. Because so far, we haven't really met a lot of channelers, I guess. Like, we've met a lot of Aes Sedai, but we don't see them channeling all the time. Siuan Sanche, she later this season has some really cool channeling. But again, she's more of an effortless channeler, but you can still tell that she's concentrating. And then you have Moiraine, who she's doing like the whole Tai Chi thing, like really like winding into it. And I think that works for Moiraine. In the books, her test for the Shaw, so before she becomes an Aes Sedai, she's actually like dancing in her test in the arches, and she's just like, she's dancing, she's channeling, and she's just, I don't know. That would be a really fun question for Rosamund Pike. Like, what did you take into account New Spring, like her little dancing moment into your channeling? Because it kind of, she's kind of got some almost dance moves
I
going
would agree
on.
with that. And if it wasn't her, it could have been the show took that into consideration.
Yeah, I know that they worked with someone who helped them like express the channeling and the movements in whatever way felt most natural to them.
Okay.
So it really, I think, depended on the actress or actor to kind of like lean into how they wanted to express that and how they felt comfortable expressing that, because like you don't want it to be cheesy.
Right.
But at the same time, you have to actually show something. So with Alanna, she does a lot of hand motions, where Moiraine is like a very big, full body, arms up in the air movement. So if you, going back to the episode though, you really like the cold open.
I do like the cold open.
Was there another scene that you really liked, or maybe just a plot line?
Honestly, for this episode, the Lanfear plotline is probably my favorite.
Okay.
Because this is
more Forsaken.
Yeah, I really enjoy this episode. I think it does a lot to set the stage for the coming episodes.
Yeah, it's a good mid-season finale.
Absolutely. The only thing that I would change is like I forgot like the scene that the episode ends on is actually cut in half between this episode and next episode, and in that moment I was like, "Oh, well, that's all right."
Yeah, I do love next episode cut to Lanfear, where she's like, she drops the B word and it's like that's so her.
Then there's the high-speed chase on horses, and I do think the return of Lanfear is one of my favorite key plot points in this episode.
I'm really excited for the introduction of more Forsaken. I mean, next season, I think that's one of the main things I'm really looking forward to. I know, like, I'm super excited about Elida, but more Forsaken is always fun. They do bad guys really good.
They do.
Like, it's really entertaining. But with this episode, if I had to pick a favorite plot line, I think it's everything happening between Moiraine and her sister, and how Lady Anvaere really gets the jump on Moiraine and turns the tables on her. Because Moiraine is desperately tracking Rand down, and she's not getting any information from the guard at the entry gate into the city, and she's kind of running all around. She's frazzled. And Lady Anvaere is just like, if you want to know where this boy went, you will sit down and have tea with me. But it's so like family Damadrid. I love it.
The dynamics in that family, I think, work to really support like who Moraine's character is, the constant continued secret keeping, and how that works to isolate her from those who care about her and her allies.
I would absolutely agree. Even with that moment with Alanna talking to Lan, you didn't know Moiraine before. Something changed her. And she's talking about the day that Moiraine learned about the prophecy that the dragon reborn has been reborn again. So after that, she pretty much left everything behind. The Aes Sedai wanted her to return to Cairhien to sit on the throne because they wanted an Aes Sedai queen. And instead of doing that, Moiraine left the tower. And I mean, as an Aes Sedai, she's allowed to do that, but she fled. Like, cloak and dagger was out of there. And every moment since then has been tracking down this kid. The conversation that she has with Lady Anvaere, her sister here, really does a good job of highlighting it.
Yeah, I think that the way that they have done Moraine's character in the show, it really builds on the Blue Aja mission.
Yeah, her and Swan Sanche are just in it together, like them against the rest of the world. And I think the Blue Aja as a whole is probably the most, I want to say the most tight knit, I feel like, in the White Tower. Because when things do get political, I feel like the Blue Aja tends to stick together in a more unified front. You'll see it later in the book series. It's not really like something that happens at the beginning, but that's something interesting that you picked up on just from the show.
Yeah, and when you were talking about unified fronts, I could see the blues and the reds really embodying unified fronts.
The Reds, too. I mean, I guess it's because the Reds, they're very aligned in their one mission, which is like taking out male channelers.
Yeah, you've got the collective mission of Reds to, rid the world of pesky male channelers. And then you have the collective mission of the Blue Aja to champion causes and uncover hidden truth.
Would you be surprised to know that the Blue Aja is pretty much like one of their terms for like the people that work with them are called the eyes and ears, so that the Blue Aja is basically, they're like the CIA. Like they have contacts everywhere.
That's kind of how I would look at them, as like the CIA. And then the Reds are more like the FBI.
The FBI just going after the top 10 men most wanted.
Yeah, they've got their most wanted convicts list, and they're like federal bounty hunters.
I remember the first episode that you did with me on the podcast side. So I don't even know if that episode went to YouTube, but I think I ended up naming it "The Reds Are Like the Feds."
It was one of my first impressions of them, is I was like, wow, this is like the cops.
Yeah.
I do think it's interesting, though, that like when we look at Moiraine and her obsession with secrecy, sometimes this like seems to reflect a belief that the burden of knowledge should rest with her alone. I see Seanchan as like kind of the one person that she feels comfortable sharing those burdens with, because obviously she does not want to share them with her warder or any of her friends or her family or her allies.
See, I wish they would have brought in more from New Spring in this season, because if you go back to that whole story of her fleeing the tower, that whole book is essentially just solidifying her mission, but also the stark realization that now that she knows about this, other dark friends know about this too. Her and Swan have to keep everything a secret because they don't know who else knows,
right,
and who else might be working for the other side. So when you get this tension between her and Lan, and her not telling Lan about Rand being alive and this and that, and being so secretive to everyone in her life, it makes her look kind of unhinged, because on one hand, you want to say, there's safety in numbers. You need to form a group and think about like your defenses in that aspect. But again, if the Forsaken are out walking around and they know that how big of a group is going to matter.
That's a good point to make.
So on one hand, I want to be like, damn it, Moiraine, just try and work with others, try and fight this and not push so many people away. But then it's like, but would I do the same? I don't know.
Well, when you look at it from like the Blue Aja mission, it's much more easier to understand why Moiraine approaches things the way that she does. But I also see like what you're talking about with like the whole safety in numbers, and even just beyond safety, there's a much higher probability for like situational processing power when you have more minds involved.
That's true.
That's not to say Moiraine isn't very smart and capable, but somebody else could have ideas that are presented from like a slightly different perspective that could work too.
Yeah, and I think episode 7 is where you start to see that finally happen, where she has Varen working with her as they kind of flee the castle in Cairhien, where Seanchan is like trying to fend off Lanfear's very theatrical antics. But again, she's got Alanna on her side and she's got Varen, and they're kind of working together now. And I think that's a really interesting part of the story, because from this point forward, now she does kind of have like a little collective.
Yeah, she actually, yeah, that's a good point to make. She does. Towards the end of the season, you start to see her like own little crafted collective take form.
Yeah, I really like also in this episode, again, like going back to this Liandrin Nynaeve partnership in a way. They're not really partners, but it goes back to that question we asked ourselves earlier on. What does Liandrin want and what is she doing to achieve her goals here? And that little meeting that she has with Nynaeve downstairs in the basement where the arches are, I mean, she basically had Nynaeve eating out of the palm of her hand.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can see through like brief scenes, like where we see Nynaeve go to where the warders train. And
Mm-hmm.
Liandrin is somehow, of course, her radar goes off and then she lurks over to see what's happening. But I don't think that we should discount like how close of an eye Liandrin keeps on Nynaeve and how that can assist her in basically manipulating Nynaeve.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I think Liandrin employs like a lot of dark empathy with Nynaeve and taps into where Nynaeve's weaknesses and fears are and then exploits those in order to push Nynaeve down the path Liandrin wants her on.
Yeah, you know who also does a lot of that this episode? Selene slash
I think
Lanfear.
she's been doing that from the moment she came on screen.
She always appears so empathetic on one hand, and she's just telling Rand almost exactly what he wants to hear. And on one hand, I do think that she truly does feel the things that she's telling him. I know that she does have these strong, truthful emotions about, but she's absolutely weaponizing them against
Yeah,
him.
and like as far as Lanfear goes, she can believe this all that she wants and that makes this her true reality, but it doesn't mean that like her motives aren't tied to something else entirely.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
she is actually one of the characters that I like a lot. I think she's terrible. Her like dating a teenager at her big age of 3,000 plus is weird. Um but I never get tired of seeing her have some sort of like mental health episode and then
Yeah.
acting out on it.
Yeah. She's a fun one. I'm excited to see how her story progresses because at the end of the season, you've kind of got her working with Moiraine in a
Yeah, in a
way.
way. And like one thing I think is important to consider is Lanfear is not technically obsessed with Rand. Rand could be anybody. It's the reincarnated Luce Theron.
That just makes it so, like, it's so wild,
It's
right?
yeah,
Like,
it's so dehumanizing while also looking at like who Rand came from at the same time. It is full tilt crazy and I love it.
yeah. Yeah. Because even if the soul is the same person, we have to take into account that Rand al'Thor, the sheep herder, has lived an entirely different life than Luce Theron.
When he's
At this point in the story, they are not the same.
no, they are not. When they're like up on that like I don't want to call it a mountain edge, but
Yeah, like a cliff
yeah,
top.
they're on that like cliff edge and he's looking out amongst the nature and he's like, this is where the world makes sense. And I'm like, this is why she can run a con on you so easily.
Yeah. Oh, sheep herder.
What do you think her return as a Forsaken means for the stakes moving forward for everyone?
I think with Lanfear, it just means more chaos because she's not beholden to the other Forsaken. She's kind of a lone wolf in that sense where she does what she wants to do. But the problem with her is that she's incredibly unstable. This puts anyone in Rand's circle in peril. Think about the strong relationships that Rand has, whether it be Moiraine, Nynaeve, Egwene, and people in the future that we haven't really like seen yet. All of these people surrounding him, hoping that he's going to do the right thing and trying to protect him and trying to lead him and trying to help him. if at any point they're like, hey, this lady over here, like, not like swing on sight, if she has any idea that someone is trying to build a wedge between them, what is she going to do?
Mm. Well, I think we learned pretty quickly that she'll, do what she's best at, which is act crazy. When I look at like why Ishamael would release her in the order that he did, because we see later in the season they don't necessarily get along very well. It's like two heads of state fighting for the ultimate top position. But
Yeah.
if I were him and I wanted to keep everybody busy while I finish up what I need to do in private, I would definitely release the Forsaken that's going to head out and just start causing chaos wherever they go, because Lanfear acts as a really good bait and switch.
Yeah, and there's always the possibility that Lanfear could have the job that Ishamael wanted her to do was get close to Rand and then hopefully bring him on board. And that's not a terrible plan. It seems like probably the easiest way to go about things, considering if you release all of the Forsaken, it's kind of overkill.
Releasing them all at one time also seems to have a lot of like risk involved for the Forsaken, because if Ishamael can't like get everybody into the chain of command correctly, you're going to have a bunch of personalities just running around acting out on their whims all the time. He's still got to establish that chain of command within the Forsaken for this plan to keep moving forward.
He had a good idea with Lanfear, but obviously the end of the season we see why it wasn't such a great plan.
No,
But
no, she definitely did what he wanted and created a distraction, but he didn't think about how uncontrollable she is. That regardless, she's still going to do what she wants. She is in this for her and being reunited with her. Let's just call it love to make it easy.
yeah, he does get the last laugh though, which of course he did. Going back to Liandrin and Nynaeve, I really liked this conversation where she's talking about how the Aes Sedai are cursed too. We have to sit and watch the ones we love pass by with no power to stop it. And she's talking about what you have to do is find a purpose. And then when that purpose is gone, find another one. And Nynaeve said, have you found another? And I was like, oh my gosh, she has the Black Aja. That's what she's running right now. That has to be her purpose at this moment in time. And it's just oh, and then it leads right into her blasting all three of these girls down in the tower basement. And it's just like, oh man, it was so close, so close.
Well, I mean, she makes a good point that Elayne is a complication here.
Yeah.
Elayne is not like Nynaeve and Egwene, where they're far from home and there's nobody who can really do anything if they disappear. Elayne is the heir to one of the most powerful kingdoms. Her going missing is going to draw attention immediately.
Yeah. I know what happens in the books. I don't know how the show is going to handle that.
Right.
So I really can't say. But do you have any ideas? What might happen?
I have some speculations about what could happen if certain things happen, like, like Elayne goes missing and then she's the heir to Andor.
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to make sure I wasn't getting my fantasy universes confused. So, like, you have the heir to Andor go missing, that's going to get Andor involved. And if the White Tower loses their heir just in the wind, that could create a lot of problems on the political front with a nation of that influence and power. And I would imagine that the White Tower does not need I'm just calling them nations because I don't know how, like, these different areas would be categorized. But you don't need, like, your powerful government systems fighting back against you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, too, that that's a fair point, and it almost kind of leads into another topic that I wanted to talk about.
Ooh, okay.
Because we have that confrontation between Liandrin and Leanne, who is working as like active Amerlin seat while Swan Sanche
I always look
is
at
gone.
her like the lieutenant governor.
Yeah.
Yeah, they seem to have an interesting dynamic where they don't like each other.
No, and Liandrin says flat out about Swan Sanche, if she falls, you fall. And she's right. Because going back to this daughter heir scenario, if we end up in a situation where the nation of Andor is not aligned with the White Tower any longer, if someone has to be the fallout person for that, it's going to be Swan Sanche, and Swan Sanche's not there right now. Liandrin's there. So, or not Liandrin, Leanne is there. So it's going to be both of them under the scrutiny of this catastrophe.
Do you think that Liandrin is trying to like trick Leanne into doing something that'll, let's say, reflect badly on her skills as a leader?
It's possible.
It's really obvious in that scene that Liandrin and Leanne do not get along. So Liandrin goes in as like, what's up with this? Like, what's going on in the West? And Leanne's like, there's always problems in the West. And then Liandrin kind of makes like a thing about it. And to me, it almost seems like by going to somebody who really dislikes you, pushing to do something, you're actually pushing them further away from paying attention to it.
I hadn't thought about it like that, but we know that there have been some Aes Sedai sent out there, correct?
I thought she had said...
Because I think, like, we learn later on that, I think it's Magdan, one of the Blue Aja members is captured there. And it's not the Yellow Aja woman. It's someone that after Egwene is captured, she's talking to her through the wall.
Yeah. I know who you're talking about because she was in the spa with Moiraine last season.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I know exactly who you're talking about.
But if the Seanchan show up and Liandrin knows Lady Suroth, Black Aja, insider information, Ishamael's out there too, they want this to go down as smoothly as possible. Deploying more Aes Sedai out there, not good. So yeah, if Liandrin did go to her and was like, what are you going to do about this? And was hoping that that would goad her into doing the opposite, it worked.
That's how I took it, was Liandrin was goading her into doing the opposite because she really needs the White Tower to not send more people. Yeah. Like the ones that have gone out there have either given like, you know, there's not a lot of people going missing. They're kind of like dull reports. So you don't need more eyes out there, more eyes thinking about what's happening, processing, giving their thoughts, because then that could draw attention to what's really happening out in the West, which is basically like a hostile takeover.
Yeah. I do want to touch on Alanna and Lan and Maxim and Yvonne for a moment.
Okay.
To me, this is hilarious. I think this is the one thing that I just like was like, not totally into, is the fact that now that they have found this little note from that Lan stole from Moiraine about Daughter of the Night, this dark prophecy, now they're like, oh, Lan's probably a dark friend. And it's like, oh, yeah, man, you guys.
This.
No.
I'll be honest.
Not Lan Mandragoran.
I really enjoy the way the actor plays Maxim. For me, it's like, it's fine. I'm not like upset about more exposition.
Right.
It just, the way that they so quickly are like, he's a dark friend, got a spy on him. Part of me is like, why don't you guys leave that up to the Blue Aja?
Just take him to the tower.
Just stick to what you're good at.
I think it's really funny, but I did appreciate the different types of feedback he was getting from whether it be Yvonne or Maxim, because he kind of got mixed messages from each of them, but although they weren't like the same message, they were still helpful in a way. So I did kind of like the duality between these two warders and this kind of behind the veil look at, from the outside, they all, you know, they seem so united, but really, like when you look close and you really know what's going on, it's not all sunshine and rainbows with this trio. And I think that's something important to think about going forward, because something like this will become relevant to the story.
Okay, let me say this. I do enjoy like learning more about the warder bond, like how Maxim said like that Alanna keeps his hidden
Yeah.
because his presence in that trio of bonds is pretty antagonistic to everyone, himself included.
Yeah. And I mean, this is difficult because with any warder bonds like that, if you are not in lockstep with that person being inside each other's heads, what a nightmare. Your power level, your defenses, your everything is bolstered, but like the emotional aspect of it to me wouldn't be worth it.
Yeah, me personally, the idea of that bond is no thank you. I don't want an audience. I don't want to be audience to someone else's mind.
Right? I guess maybe if I was someone like Varen and I was just, like hanging
Chilling.
out at a cottage, writing books and stuff, sure, great. There's no threats out there. I'm not doing anything particularly dangerous, but you've still got that someone there in case, some unforeseen accident happens or the casual shadow spawn attack. But thinking about being in the Green Aja where you're essentially just like the military, like you're called to fight when necessary, knowing what happens to you when your warder dies or if your warder and your Aes Sedai dies, not worth it.
That's a good point to make
That's
too.
too risky.
That's a really good point to make.
I would rather be, if I was in the Green Aja, I would rather be working in circles with other Aes Sedai than, having
Kind of like the Reds
multiple
do.
warders. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, a little group of Reds seems to be
They're a force.
a force. Like Reds don't have warders for a reason.
I mean, it's not a terrible idea.
It's not like pairing up Aes Sedai instead of having warders, I think could work. But I also appreciate like the warder aspect and the bond and how it adds to the story. But for me personally, absolutely the not. Stay out of my head.
Or, if you're just...
That's confidential information and you don't have the security clearance for it.
I mean, unless you're like Alanna, who's just thirsty and wants a menagerie of men, like, sure, go for it. But yeah, it's dangerous, though. It's very dangerous. I want to get to Perrin and Elyas. And Hopper.
Oh, I love Hopper.
I do too.
There was a moment like this is not really relevant or anything, but there was a moment where on screen you could see all of the like dog hair on Perrin's clothes. And I was like, that warms my heart because feels I would have, been all over the dogs too, just covered in hair.
Yeah, I really enjoy these moments where Elyas is explaining things to him. And also we get that information that he says, you've been sending us images for months now. And he's talking about Hopper and he's like, he lost his mate too. And then he says to Perrin, talking about Perrin's wife, we all see her when you sleep. And then he also asks, we get to the topic of Aes Sedai and why the Wolfbrothers don't spend time near women who can channel. And he's like, what do you think they would do with us? They would study us. Like, we wouldn't be safe.
He's right.
That's terrifying because look, like we learned the same thing with Logain. Moiraine was like, hey, would you rather be back at the tower with the brown Aja and the yellow Aja, like studying you? No.
I do love how she tried to play this whole little plot to Logain out as her doing him a favor. I could have left you in Tar Valon.
What got me is when she produces that dagger and she's like, I know what you really want. You teach Rand what he needs to learn, and I'll give you what you really want.
Yeah, she's
death.
You teach Rand, and I'll let you kill yourself.
Moiraine ice cold Domadrid.
I really enjoy watching like the wolves guide Perrin to accept his connection with them. We see it in that moment where he finally kind of connects with Hopper and he is so excited. He's all like, his name's Hopper. And Elyas says, I mean, close enough, bud. You got close enough there.
That was a really good line.
It was. I love how every time Perrin like does something new with the wolf bond, he gets pretty excited about it.
And I love how Elyas is so deadpan. Like, Perrin's excitement does not wear off on this guy at all.
No, not at all. But I do have to wonder how his connection to wolves is going to align with his resistance to violence.
Yeah. Well, we see it later on in the season, but if it were me in this world and I could pick any capabilities, like any magical capabilities, it would definitely not be something that men can do. Like the visions, the prophecies, stuff like that. No, thank you. Channeling would be great, don't get me wrong, but I couldn't be a channeler and an Aes Sedai because the whole like militarized aspect of it and the way that the White Tower is run as an institution feels highly antagonistic to me. So I couldn't be there either.
Yeah, that's a solid no.
Yeah, but the Wolfbrother bond, I could do that.
Absolutely. I would be okay with that. I could do that too. I like the secrecy of it. I like
the aesthetic.
Yeah, I like the aesthetic. I like the animals. Like now, whether or not I have the personality for it is completely a different topic. But as far as like which faction I would want to be in, it's definitely Wolf Bond.
Or like a channeler from another group.
That isn't the Seanchan.
That isn't the Seanchan, yes. The Wolfbrother thing, talking about Perrin, how he's going to respond to violence, future, like not this season, season 3. That's a really good topic because I'm not quite sure I don't know exactly how the show is going to do it, which is fun. In the books, at this point in the story, so if you haven't read book 3, The Dragon Reborn, cover your ears for a couple seconds. But Perrin actually meets another Wolfbrother. But this one has gone completely feral, like running in the woods, howling naked at the moon.
Just about to ask you if as you ascend further into the wolf bond, do you start to lose humanity? Like the human condition?
I think the thing is, and this is just a theory for me, this is not a spoiler at all, but I think it's a toss-up. But I also think that if you have someone there to explain it to you, like Elyas is, that's going to ground you and make you like realize, hey, I'm not losing my mind. This is okay. This is something I can deal with and figure out. But if you were just living out your life somewhere and you're seeing these like premonitions and visions like Perrin is having, you would legitimately think that you're losing your mind, and that's terrifying.
Especially with the added paranoia of wolves in the area, like, following you around.
Right?
Because we see that in, like, the first season where we first start to see the wolves, like, show up in his proximity. And you can tell, like, he keeps noticing them in different points and is like, why are they following me?
Yeah. I mean, you would think that you're having, like, a schizophrenic episode.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people give book Perrin a hard time because it takes him so long to come to terms with what's happening to him. Like, okay, we get it, get over it. But also, it's such a cool thing that you can do. Like, embrace it, my guy.
Right. Like, embrace it. It's super cool. But at the same time, I understand him struggling and being like, what is happening to me? Because it's not exactly like the wolf bond is a super common trait, right?
Right. It's probably more rare than anything else.
Yeah, Perrin's really getting like the gold standard treatment from the wheel as far as his wolf bond goes, because it dropped him into a proximity of being near Elyas, who seems to have a good handle on his wolf bond.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about your thoughts on this.
Okay.
Because we have that whole monologue from Lady Anvaere about, House Damodred just being the lowest of the low after their uncle ruined the name. And she's talking about fighting for that back and how now she says, my son is going to marry the queen. Now no one will spit on House Damodred again. Later this season, we learn that Barthanes is a dark friend and he's imprisoned the last time that we see him. This feels like a really interesting spot to theorycraft because we know from Rafe Judkins, the showrunner, that Lady Anvaere is supposed to come back at some point. And I have no idea what the context will be for her reemergence back into the story, knowing that like she's fought tooth and nail for her status to come back and she might have just lost it again.
And her son being a dark friend.
Yeah.
That would be really hard to grapple with. If you've spent your whole life watching your family's position in society be degraded and then fought as hard as she did to bring them back up through the ranks into a place of power, watching your child undo a lifetime's worth of work based on a personal decision would be excruciating.
Yeah. And like how do you remedy this?
I don't know. Do you remedy it? Or as a parent, do you just choose to try and protect your child regardless of the cost?
The way that scene ends with him locked up and he's screaming like, "Mother, no!" She feels pretty resolute in her decision. It would be wild for her to turn around and free him knowing what she knows.
Well, that's true.
But at the same time, is status more important?
I think that's a really good question to pose. Where does being a parent end? Not that she ever stops being his parent, but where does like the desire to protect your children end in comparison to what they're doing? Do you keep trying to protect your child even though they're a dark friend, or do you let them reap the consequences of their own actions?
Yeah. There's also maybe another question in here about, is it possible that her status was restored through her son being a dark friend?
Ooh, that's a really good point to bring up too.
Is it possible that he had influence in high places because of his status, not because of his family name, but because who he knows as a dark friend?
That would be awful for her to have to take in. For her to find out that all of her work was actually in vain, and the
real moral of the story is throwing your lot in with the bad guys is great for business.
Yeah, the real turning point was her son becoming a dark friend and not the effort of labor she's exerted her whole life.
Yeah. Learning that he took the easy way out and has restored her house. Holy shit.
That would be a lot to take in considering the speech she gave, like her monologue about that in this episode. It would be really awful for her, I can imagine, if she finds out that the real key to all of this was him being a dark friend.
Yeah.
But also, what do you do then? Do you give it all up?
Right.
Or do you concede?
How honorable are you?
Right. Do you give it all up in the name of beliefs and ideals? Or do you go with it in the name of getting your, ultimate goals, no matter how they present themselves?
Yeah. These are good questions. I'm going to have to, as we continue watching this season, have like a magnifying glass on anything that Barthanes says moving forward.
Yeah, I had actually kind of forgotten about him.
Mother, no! I love Barthanes. Oh, what a great character. Do we have time for ChatGPT?
I think the only one that we have, because there have not really been new characters introduced, is the only one we would really have. We haven't done Lanfears yet, have we?
No, but I feel like we could wait for later for her. Like once she's really shown her true colors.
Yeah, I was hoping we would have some additional ones, but there were like almost no new characters introduced.
Well, let's close it out on Min then, maybe.
Yeah, I was wondering if we were going to talk about this. When we look at what's going on with Matt and Min, we have another complex deception in play. It's like deception inception at this point, because you have the deceptions of Liandrin leading into the deceptions of Min, and then they're at the tavern. Matt's gambling because he's an addict, and that's just how he does things. And she goes up to the innkeeper and she's like, here's some money. He's for him to get drunk. And then, I'm meeting somebody in the room. Turns out she's definitely meeting somebody, but it's not necessarily in person. It's in Tel'aran'rhiod.
Yeah.
And the way that like Ishamael brings her into this meeting by terrifying her up front works really well for him to slide in and be like, hey, guess what? You're working for me and you don't have a choice. You're so deep in now, you can't leave even if you want to.
I think this is one of the best way to explain why you can never get out. Being a dark friend is like being in the mob. You don't get to ever walk away.
No. And the worst part is like, we don't really get any of her thoughts on it, but I do wish that we had gotten to like get a little bit of an idea about how she feels right now, because she was thinking that she was just doing stuff for Liandrin and Aes Sedai. That's safe. It's the side of the light. And then she finds out all in 1 second that it is for Liandrin, but it's not for the side of the light. And now she's in the presence of like one of the most powerful Forsaken in existence.
Yeah, like the leader of them.
I do like
what do you do?
I do appreciate that Min was like, deals off, I'm out. She tried. I give her credit that she was willing to be like, I'm not doing this for you. Granted, that's not how it's going to go, but I can imagine the internal turmoil of the realization of what's happening and what I have gotten myself into without realizing it would feel terrible in such a multifaceted way.
Do you think that this means that we're going to see a denial of that from Min later on? A way to kind of right her wrongs?
I could see like it turning into Min trying to right her wrongs for sure. I think that she's going to have like deep ideology issues with what's happening.
Yeah, I do too. And this is one of the characters that is so different than how things go in the books that I can only theorize at this point, which is kind of nice, actually. So that's probably something I'm going to be looking at her next season for to see.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how this moral conflict between helping Mat and protecting herself from Liandrin and now Ishamael is going to play out for her.
I agree.
The only person we haven't really talked about is Rand.
Yeah, that's true.
In this episode, it's more of Rand grappling with his identity and the mounting pressure of being the dragon reborn. But then we see like this moment again with him and Lanfear on the cliff, and later on after the Fade shows up unannounced, which I'm completely convinced Lanfear called that in and was like, hey,
Same.
Come out here. Haha, I'm gonna kill you now. Like, that was just cannon fodder. That Fade was cannon fodder for what she wanted to do.
Yeah.
But in those moments, like after the Fade where he's like, oh my God, I'm sorry I didn't tell you. And then he says, you're the first woman who's ever seen me as a man. And that really gives us like a glimpse into the psyche of Rand and his relationship with Lanfear. Well, Selene.
She played him like a fiddle. So you're trying to say that you love me? Oh, like I embrace you as a male channeler. It's fine. Let's go in now.
Yeah, it's fine. Let's go in. And then she's like, guess what? I can channel too. That's great, right?
Right.
Actually, I really love the ending of this episode, too. The beginning and the ending of this episode are killer. Lanfear is about to show Rand what a big boss channeler she is, and Moraine's like, not at this moment. And then Moiraine really got out of, like, a tight spot with Rand based on the fact that the Aes Sedai cannot lie. And in that moment, Rand was like, shit, you're right. Let's run. You see how that whole, like, the Aes Sedai can't lie really works in her favor. Even though Rand knows she can manipulate the truth. But, like, she's making big, bold claims.
That's Lanfear I don't think you can walk around that one.
No, you can't walk around, I didn't kill them because no one can either.
Yeah. I'm also really interested in what this means for some of the Forsaken going forward, because in the books, they can die like anyone else. So it almost feels like their death has to be like extreme for it to take. Are we talking straight to the heart, decapitation?
Yeah,
like
in the show they do make it seem a little bit more like there are special circumstances that can cause their death, but also like, is that just a Lanfear and Ishamael thing too?
Right. I kind of feel like in the show they almost went the route of like, she's daddy's favorite, so the dark one is like, and respawn. You're back.
Yeah, she definitely has that vibe.
Yeah, she was like the only chosen that was chosen. Like, yeah. I choose you to be respawn.
Well, and I mean, what is she really bringing to the table? It's not commitment to the cause.
Yeah, we'll have to see. That could have just been like a break in the story where it was like we might hand wave that later. But I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, this was a good episode, a good mid-season finale, a lot of action. I'm really excited to continue with this, but I think the next episode that we're going to be doing is actually Dune Prophecy for their mid-season finale, and then maybe once that show ends, we'll do a part 2. So if you're watching Dune Prophecy, keep your eyes peeled.
If you're not watching Dune Prophecy, you should.
Yeah, and if you're not watching it, you got time to catch up. So
yeah, I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I don't know. This episode actually might go live after we put out the Dune Prophecy episode. So I don't know. But yeah, we will see you back next time.